Hello, everyone. Welcome back again. As we gather here today, we want to express our gratitude for your participation. Please remember that all donation, no matter how small it is, will make a difference. Our third speaker, Professor Himmet Karaman, will be hosted by PMI Turkey volunteer Emrah Özdemir. I would like to welcome Emrah. Just a second. Yes, we are with you. So welcome.
Hello, Ertuğrul. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're all good. The stage is yours, actually. I'm just giving you the speaker for session.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. Hello again, everyone. This is Emrah Özdemir from PMI Turkey chapter. We've been through a lot, and thanks for PMI for hosting such a nice event that help people to make a social impact. So today I will host Professor Himmet Karaman. He studies on Istanbul earthquake loss assessment, and he has an intense academic career about disaster management, loss assessment, resilience, decision support system, geographic information systems, land surveying, earthquake engineer, and he is also working as a member and consultant of the various groups and boards of Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality. So, Himmet, we welcome you on board.
Thank you, Emrah, for your warm welcoming. I'm really glad to be invited as a speaker in this good organization, which will help people to help the people inside the earthquake zone in Turkey and Syria. Thank you again.
Thank you, and I would like to remind everyone to donate using this QR code on the corner of the screen. As Ertuğrul said before, it doesn't matter how big, how small it is. Every act matters. I would like to start with this information. And Himmet, before we start, we've been through a lot, and you are one of the most important persons in this area to help us through the process. Before we start, let's do some nice opening. I would like to ask you, after this disaster, after this period, it's a very nice question. I ask to many people, and I want to hear your answer. If you were a tree in this period of your life of this disaster times, which tree would you be? Have you ever think of it?
Actually, I was never think about it, but when you first ask about me, which tree you would be, the first name of the tree came as the sakura tree for the cherry blossoms. Most people know from the Japanese gardening miracle tree, and it's also a good way of thinking about earthquakes because Japan is one of the most resilient countries in the world with respect to earthquake damages that we recently encountered in Kahramanmaraş and surrounding cities. So I think it would be a proper choice for me to be a sakura tree in this period of time.
Oh, very, very good answer. And I think you want to be a cherry blossom sakura tree because you need your winter to study, to work more, to create an effect on people, to make an impact on people. And I think that's a very lovely choice of tree. So thank you for participating here. And I want to give the stage to you. We are listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emrah, especially for this good question for an opening session. So as Emrah has mentioned that my presentation today is about the earthquake loss assessment studies for Istanbul, that we have encountered an earthquake in Kahramanmaraş and the surrounding 10 cities. So let's first start with in 2015, we created a project with the help of Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality and the BİMTAŞ company of the municipality, which is Istanbul Urban Transformation Master Plan. This study aimed to get all the possible hazard maps of the study area, which is Istanbul, as raster maps, and classify them into a suitable number of classes and merge them as an integrated multi-hazard map using the analytical hierarchy process and the geographical information systems. So the main hazards for Istanbul were taken into consideration as the earthquake, the landslide, the flood, fire, hazardous material leakage, and the tsunami. So we combine these hazards and find out which areas in Istanbul are more hazardous with respect to a disastrous event. So it will show us which areas should be taken into consideration for risk analysis at that time. As you can see from the slide, the purple and bluish areas are the most risky ones. The purple areas are the second, and the yellow ones are the least risky areas that came as a result of multiple hazardous events. So after that, in 2018, another project, again from Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality, is developed with the name of Istanbul Urban Resilience Project. This project aimed to determine the acute shocks and the chronic stresses of Istanbul and provide an approach to increase the resilience of the city by revealing the indexes and the KPIs of the city, and to offer, as a first step, some assembly areas and shelter areas for the acute stresses that we mentioned in the previous project. So by taking into consideration not only the acute shocks, but the chronic stresses of the city was taken into consideration. The acute shocks were increased, like cyber attacks, financial instabilities, and the chronic stresses added as the traffic density, climate change, dense urbanization, poverty, and etc., as you can see from the slides. So these were taken into consideration, and indexes and the KPIs and the themes were generated for the city. Indexes were generated by several themes for economy, for society, for cultural heritage, for environment, for built environment, for critical infrastructure, for risk and vulnerability, and for governance. And by this way, we are going to understand what, in what themes the city of Istanbul is resilient and how much resilient, in what themes the city of Istanbul is not resilient, and how we can increase this resilience project of the city. So we should take into account to the city by if this city is adaptive to these themes, prescriptive to these themes and problems, is absorbing or not, or can be transforming itself to adapt to these problems or not. So by this way, we created these 8 themes that we mentioned here, and 28 indexes determined for the city, with 75 indicators and 246 qualifiers for the city. Then what did we do? By taking into account, we find out the most safer areas and most accessible areas in the city as the assembly and shelter areas. So those areas were generated by taking into account the capacity of the people, the safety of the area, and the accessibility of the people with respect to the assembly areas. And they were declared to the public with these icons at the region. Those areas were identified with these cards, with assembly areas and their shelter areas, as you can see from the slides, and totally designed the shelter areas, as you can see from the slide again, with respect to several services that should be offered to the people who were affected from an earthquake, from a flood, from flash flood, or etc. So those are the conveniences of the shelter areas in Istanbul. Green areas are the most convenient locations, but the red areas are those are the least convenient locations. So with respect to that, we determine those areas as this one, with the red ones least populated shelter areas with the least convenience, and the greens are most convenient and the areas which can service more people at the area. Unfortunately, only 2 of them was established in the city, but the rest couldn't be completed. But from now, it is from the municipality, it is eagerly wanted to be established, all of them, at the real world surface. So we created a model for it. This model gets some inputs, taking into account the hazards, the risks, the accessibilities, the conveniences, the population, and etc., and use them to create this map as a result. Another one is started to be created in 2003, which is a loss assessment tool for Turkey, mostly used for Istanbul, Izmir, Konya, Bingöl, Bursa, and surrounding areas, and create some constraints drifted our university ITU to create the earthquake loss assessment softwares for Turkey. This software, which defined the hazards based on the user scenarios and estimates the losses for the region of interest, which is Turkey, based on the consequences of the hazards. So which we call as consequence-based risk management software. So Istanbul Technical University and University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign cooperated for the creation of this specialized software for Turkey and for the United States. The United States version is named as Mavis, and Turkish version named as Hasturk, and which was supported financially by TÜBİTAK and Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality. The software looked like this one, which has the scenarios, which has the data catalogs, which has the style editor and visualization window, which is based on the GIS surroundings, and has the ability to 3D visualization of the damages of the buildings or etc. And should take into account the available inventory and models for the region. So in this case, we make a step further from Turkey, not only taking into account the Turkey, but it should be available for any region that use or that needs this kind of a software. So we did not create a constraint to use this software, but we fill the inventories which are started with the Istanbul and Marmara region, then for Turkey. So the available inventory and models are classified into 3 categories. The first one is the hazard, the other one is the fragility, and the last one is the inventory. So hazards were taken for started for earthquake, and for earthquake hazard maps, attenuation relations were taken into account, which are logarithmic functions that estimates the earthquake hazard in surrounding area with respect to several ground motion parameters. And we included many current attenuation relationships in this software. So we can also input the earthquake hazard maps from USGS, from other resources, and input it into the software. So here we can give some examples on the hazard maps that we created with Hastur, which is Burr and Atkinson's next generation attenuation models earthquake hazard map for a scenario of 7.5 magnitude earthquake in Istanbul. As you can see, the red areas shows the places where the shaking intensity will be higher, and the yellow areas shows us the places where the shaking intensity will be lower. So this is for a common scenario in Turkey. Another scenario is created by Akkar and Bombar's attenuation model, taking into account 3 different earthquakes and combining them all in one hazard map, which gives much peak ground acceleration model for the city, and it also gives the similar legend for the earthquake hazards. And another one is for spectral acceleration, another model, Akkaran, the other is 2023 model, takes into account 3 different earthquakes and combined in one map. We have also taken into consideration the landslide, flood, and tsunami hazards in the city of Istanbul. This is the landslide exposure map, which takes into account the built environment and their exposure to the landslide hazard. As you can see, the red areas are more exposed areas for the landslide, more possible areas to be exposed by the landslide, while the yellow and green ones are the less one. And the other one is the flash flood hazard map, exposure map. This exposure shows us which areas can create flash floods with respect to their depth and which structures are exposed by those flash floods. So this is an exposure map, not a hazard, not a risk map, but the map that shows us which structures are affected by what degree of flash flood, just like the previous landslide map. And this is the tsunami map, tsunami exposure map. Again, shows us the structures at the shorelines of Istanbul that will be exposed to tsunami event with respect to given wave length or wave depth. The second important inventory is the fragility, which helps us to evaluate the effect of ground shaking or ground displacements on the assets like buildings, roads, bridges, or etc. in the earthquake-prone area, and fragility relationships, which is also a mathematical function that estimates the damage on the buildings, damage on the, let's say, bridges or the substructures with respect to earthquake. These are conditional probability functions that relate the severity of the shaking to the probability of reaching or exceeding different levels of damage. So by this way, we can say that a building will be heavily damaged with 90% of probability, or a building will be collapsed with a 40% of probability, and this will give us the risk map at the end. So there are several fragility assessment methods from empirical to the detailed analysis procedure. If you have a wide variety of buildings, a large number of buildings, what you should use is the empirical method. And if you have small amount of buildings, just like 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 buildings in the area, you may choose detailed analysis procedure. Detailed analysis procedure will give you more accurate results while increasing the time and the computation effort. So if you talk about a city like Istanbul, which has almost 1.6 million buildings, it is not possible to detail analysis all the buildings or even the risky buildings by detailed analysis procedure. So what we should do is empirical and judgmental methods, or the hybrid methods method. So the fragilities that we use is empirical and judgmental fragilities. So fragility curves looks like this one, gives with respect to the acceleration value, displacement value, or velocity values of the hazard map that we created, and based on that displacement value, what is the amount of or the percentage of collapse in that displacement, or what is the amount of heavy damage on this value of acceleration. We can say that, for example, 75 or 85% of heavy damage probability for 1.7 g acceleration value. Then we can create the building damages, estimate the building damages, I'm sorry. So we can estimate them with respect to heavy or complete damage possibilities, as you can see from the slide here, or we can just visualize the heavy damage possibilities of the city of Istanbul, or we can create the building damages, what amount of complete damage of the buildings of Istanbul will have with respect to 0.2 seconds spectral acceleration for a 7.5 moment magnitude earthquake. Or we can combine them in a raster map and find out most risky areas for building collapse in Istanbul, just like in this map. Another analysis that we compiled for Istanbul is the fire following earthquake. As you may recall, many earthquakes create secondary hazards, trigger the other type of hazards like fire after the earthquake. So post-earthquake urban fires are generally caused by strong ground shaking. Strong shaking damages the structures and lifelines of the cities, such as water, electrical, and gas systems. Heavy damage to the electrical and gas systems can result in leakage, which can cause many simultaneous fire ignitions. And there is also possibility with respect to the contents of the buildings that can be overturned and start a fire, just like heating systems, climate systems, televisions, or etc. When they collapse on turn down, they may start a fire inside the building. So this were taken into account by taking into account this model inside the Astrix software. So the contents of the buildings, the utility systems of the building, and the occupancy type of the building takes into account what kind of contents included inside or surrounding areas of the building. Then these entities were taken into account by the building damage and the shaking intensity of the earthquake, and then the ignition probabilities are calculated for each single building of the city. So by this way, a map that you can see from the slide is created for the city of Istanbul, shows us which areas are more prone to fire following earthquakes after a 7.5 magnitude earthquake in Istanbul. Another analysis that we compiled for Istanbul is the road closure following the earthquake. The February 6 earthquakes, which placed in Kahramanmaraş city boundaries with the Gaziantep city, showed us many roads can be blocked after the earthquake by the liquefaction, by the soil type of the under the road, by the collapsed buildings, by the collapsed bridges, overpasses, underpasses, or etc. So we should also take into care this analysis by taking into care the direction of the building damage or the collapse. We can find out which areas will be affected by the collapsed buildings, bridges, or etc. And then we can find out which roads may be closed after the earthquake. So after the road closure, another important thing that we should consider, as we have seen from the Kahramanmaraş earthquakes, the water network damage is important to handle before the earthquake occurs. So we estimated the water network damage in Istanbul following an earthquake, and by this way we can see that which regions of the water network will be affected more, requires more repairs, in which segments of the water network, and then we can retrofit those network segments before the earthquake, and after the earthquake we can still provide people the drinking and usage water, so on. Another network is the natural gas network, which can also create fire and turn off the heating for the city. We have also lived it in Kahramanmaraş earthquakes. Most of the cities around Hatay and Kahramanmaraş and Kilis could not be heated because of the damage occurred in the natural gas pipelines and the collapsed buildings in order to avoid fire following the earthquake or blasting following the earthquake. So this should be also considered, which areas should be retrofitted, which areas should be taken into care, and we have also taken into care the gas network in Istanbul. Another important damage analysis that we should consider is the bridge damage analysis, which may also affect the road closure and the accessibility within the city. Because we have seen that in Kahramanmaraş, first 3 days, there were many areas that we cannot access to apply the search and rescue operations. So collapsed bridges, collapsed viaducts, collapsed over and underpasses on the road may avoid us to reach some places. So we should also be prepared for this damages too. So if we go more faster, we find out how to retrofit them, what will be the cost of them, what will be the cost benefit of them, and we also take into account the traffic density changes after the bridge damages, and then we combine them all and created integrated multi-risk map of Istanbul, as you can see. Why do we use it? We use it to find out the prioritized urban transformation areas for Istanbul to minimize or mitigate the risk of collapsed buildings in the city. And then I'm going to show you an application that we did for Kahramanmaraş city. I will present you another screen here. First, stop it. And I'm going to show you this one. So this is the application that we created with JS software Esri dashboard and questionnaire for Kahramanmaraş region and send it to the search and rescue teams at the first and rapid damage assessment teams where they have located the damaged buildings by their location, and the address is automatically and the location automatically get. And you input a photograph of the building, collapsed building, and you select the damage situation of the building, heavily damaged, collapse, standing still, unknown. Then you select if the search and rescue team come by or not, or unknown. And then you enter the number of people under the damaged building, enter your information for the contact, enter the requested services, which is ambulance, cranes, or etc., and the personnel, medical personnel, search and rescue personnel, the operator for the cranes, or etc., or the translator, or which one. And we sent the form, and when we sent the form, another screen comes into hand in the city. As you can see, we have determined almost 5,000 damaged buildings in the earthquake area, as you can see the map from here. And every dot shows us a building and tells us the situation of the building. For example, there are several buildings without the pictures. And any search and rescue team not come by. No search and rescue, no search and rescue, like this one. If we select another one, here's these people were inside the damaged building. Another one, another damaged building here. As you can see, the damaged buildings were inputted, the situation or any search and rescue operation conducted in the building or not is given. So we can also see that how many of them are collapsed. Green ones are the collapsed percentages. Yellow ones are the unknown percentages. Orange ones are the heavily damaged percentages. And the search and rescue operation team is come by. The orange is no. Yellow is unknown. The gray is yes. And those are the singular buildings that were inputted latestly, as you can see. And those are the number of inputs from the cities, which city has how many inputs, and the number of inputs by days, as you can see. So that is the one that I am going to show you, and I will end up with my slide again. So I'm ready for the questions. If you have any, please go ahead and ask anything.
Professor Himmet, I would like to thank you about this informative presentation. And now I would like to mention that I'm very happy about someone is taking the control of the after disaster situation, but I'm also, to be honest, scared about what's coming. Yeah, it's inevitable. All the studies shows that. So thanks for your work. Thanks for your team. So here are the questions. Let's start with the one from Michel. He says that educated persons survive better in these situations because he says education is a key in these matters. What do you think of this?
Yeah, that's a correct declarement because educated people are aware of what is going to be happening after the earthquake. So they are more prepared to what's going on, but less educated people are not aware of what will happen to them. So we have also made some social vulnerability studies for the people inside the city of Istanbul, and it also showed us the less educated areas the population resides there. They are not aware of the earthquake results, or they are aware of what will happen, but they neglect the consequences. They do not try to do anything. But unfortunately, we have another important thing that the educated people are more well paid, and uneducated people has less income. So it's also avoiding some of people in Turkey or in Istanbul to apply for an earthquake preparedness education, apply for renewing the system, apply for strengthening the building or retrofitting the building due to the monetary issues too. So not only the education, but also the income is also important in this case.
Yeah, it's a combined effect.
Yes,
So thank
yes.
you. Combined effect. So this is my question. Does your model consider the construction quality? I think it's a big question in everybody's mind. What do you think of it?
Yeah, let me tell you, there is two section of the analysis or the models. The first one is taken into assumption, because we assume that based on the year of the building or the age of the building, based on the structure type of the building, and based on the number of floors of the building, we assume that all the buildings are constructed accordingly to the codes, the earthquake codes. This is the first assumption. But as you know, not all the buildings,
which
not
might
all the
not be the
buildings
case.
constructed with quality, proper quality. So the second step, if we have the data about those buildings, because most of the buildings data is not may not be available. So if we have the available data, yes, we take into consideration of the construction quality of the buildings. If there are any illegal application on the building, illegal floors on the building, or if the building is completely illegal, we have different fragility functions for those kind of buildings too. So we also consider them, but if we have the data.
Okay, thank you. ask another question for you. So there are so many disasters taking place around the world. How do NGOs assess probabilities to manage proactive versus reactive efforts?
Actually, most of the studies or the projects are done for the organizations connected or directly to the government. So the municipalities are sharing these results with the NGOs. So Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality is sharing those kind of results with NGOs in Turkey like acute or Mahalle Afet Gönüllüleri, which is district, sub-district or neighborhood disaster volunteers organizations. When they apply for their own neighborhood, they can receive the results and they can make their proactive or reactive efforts based on those results too. So they can get it from the related organizations where we submit our results.
Okay, Himmet, this is the end of our session. Last question we will ask for you, Ünsal's question. And in this time, I also want every participant in this session that while thanking Himmet about his presentation, please also share your feelings about how do you feel about today, how do you feel about, please share your feelings so that we can feel this human contact. That's very important for us. And the Ünsal's question is, do the municipality or other institution take the measures according to your study? What do you think?
Yeah, actually, there is a time lapse in 10 years at most. Actually, it is more than 10. It is almost 24 years past since the previous big earthquake hit Kocaeli region. There were many projects and studies compiled for several cities, and most of them remained in the shelves of the institutions or the municipalities. But recently, after the Kahramanmaraş earthquake, Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality started a big campaign, collect many scientists, me also, and we are sharing this to how to prepare the city for the earthquake, how to mitigate the risks due to the earthquake, and they are taking these studies into account and trying to create more open roads by retrofitting the buildings around the roads that may be closed after the earthquake. They are trying to retrofit the substructure or infrastructures that may fall after the earthquake. And they are started retrofitting campaigns for the buildings. They are also providing the money with some very lower interest ratios and no extra incomes. So this type of studies are started to be done with taking into account the results that we have encountered in our projects too.
Thank you, Professor Himmet.
No problem.
Thank you for your speech. I think we need more heroes like you. Please keep studying and please make everyone safe in the end of the day. These proactive studies and your studies like mitigating the risks, it's very important. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the good opportunity to share it with you and with other people. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do not forget to donate in the QR code. It's available during the sessions. Thank you, everyone. See you.
Yes.